Hi, my dear listeners. This is retired Lieutenant Colonel Samsudeen Sarr being back again on this Wednesday, the 29th of November 2023. Today, I will be reading chapter 27 of my book Testimony of a Gambian Military Officer and a Diplomat. The title of this chapter is Back to Gambia, My Appointment After the Embarrassment. It's worth noting that the Gambia gained independence from British colonialism on the 18th of February 1965, making 18th February 2015 a significant occasion for celebrating the nation's Golden Jubilee. So in late January, Ambassador Major Sey called and invited me to attend the Golden Jubilee or 50th anniversary celebration of the country's independence from British colonial rule, which he said was a special invitation from President Haja Jane. However, there was no official invitation card or letter from the state or from Jane. But to confirm, I contacted Jane's press secretary, Mr. Lang Manga, who confirmed that the invitation was indeed extended to me from their office. I took my annual leave from Frontline Industries on Monday, the 9th of February 2015, something I rarely did, usually preferring to receive their leave money instead of taking time off. After 16 years of living in exile, I returned to the Gambia on Saturday, 14th February 2015. Before my departure, Fanderim Mbake began publishing all of my previous articles that were critical of Jane and his government before our reconciliation in 2014. The articles were published in his widely read online newspaper and discourse on Freedom Radio, with translations into the Gambia's local languages for maximum impact. Additionally, stories from my book, which were considered to be provocative to Jane, were shared by dissidents displeased by my change of heart. As anticipated, my arrival in the Gambia was negatively and inaccurately reported by Mr. Fanderim Mbake. It was alleged that the government declared a national state of emergency and security forces had set up roadblocks and checkpoints along the airport road for my apprehension and detention. That account was false, and instead, I was warmly received at the airport by friends and family members. The immigration and police officers recognized me and provided assistance to facilitate my arrival and checking out. From the airport, I was driven directly to my sister's residence via the new coastal road without any incident. I noted the commendable infrastructural development compared to the time I had left the country in 1999, including new roads, buildings, brighter streets, and a large number of modern vehicles. Over the next 2 days, on the 15th and 16th of February, I visited and received close family members and made a visit to the Serekunda graveyard to pay my respect to my deceased family members. They included my late mother, Ajirohi Gay, my grandmother, Mam Antandao, and my brother, Abdullah Sarr, who were all buried in the same area as my father and his brother, who passed away in 1985 and 1986, respectively. I found solace in prayer, providing a sense of satisfaction and closure. However, on the 17th of September, the day before the independence anniversary, something very abnormal happened. I received a phone call from Mr. Keba Tamfa, the very GRTS reporter who had interviewed me in New York City the previous September, asking whether he could interview me again in the Gambia. He had heard about my arrival in the country and wanted a follow-up interview after the one we had 5 months ago. We agreed to have the interview at my sister's residence around 6 p.m. But just before 6 p.m., Mr. Damfa called me again to apologize for not being able to come because President Jani had invited him for a special interview at the State House. I was unable to watch his interview with President Jani, but soon after it aired, two gentlemen, close family friends, came urgently to tell me that the president was seriously criticizing me during his interview with Mr. Damfa. They informed me that Jani seemed surprised by my presence in the country, and in response, he denigrated me for allegedly authoring a book full of lies and fabrications. The men who came to my house were very concerned and warned me to leave the country as soon as possible. They were afraid that Jani will order my arrest and detention. While I considered their advice genuine, I was an American citizen and had already registered my presence in the country with the United States Embassy in the Gambia. Additionally, I had obtained a legal visa issued to me at the Gambian mission in New York City. I thank my friends for their concern, but decided not to leave the country until my scheduled flight date the following week. I made attempts to contact Ambassador Major Sheikh Gay, who had come with me from America, but his phone was strangely turned off. I then reached out to Press Secretary Lang Manga, because they were the two people who had invited me on behalf of the president. Mr. Lang Manga spoke to me, but only mentioned the two invitation cards he had for me. One for the National Parade at the Independence Stadium the next day, and the order for the banquet that night. He didn't mention anything about Jani's unhinged interview. The following day, I attended both events and was given a special seat, especially at the banquet. I was surprised by the exceptional treatment I received as I was seated with foreign diplomats invited to the occasion. During the night occasion, President Jani loudly called my name 3 times for no apparent reason. I believe he was guilty and seemed uneasy. But soon after, President Jani's critical statements against me went viral on social media. Vanderi Mbake, broadcasting from North Carolina, reported that I was not going to leave the Gambia alive, claiming that Jani had indeed ordered the airport security to not let me leave the country. Many people in the Gambia believed what was broadcasted, leading to a widespread sense of fear and apprehension. In light of the situation, only my sister Lika Sarr had the nerve to accompany me to the airport when I was leaving for America. I departed from Yundum International Airport on Saturday, 21st February 2015 via Brussels, and safely landed at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City on Sunday, 22nd February 2015. Upon my arrival, many well-wishers in the United States and abroad called to express their solidarity with me, while Mr. Mbake continued to criticize me on his radio. Despite his continuous allegations, everything he said about my faith amounted to nothing truthful. But some people, as usual, chose to believe him and started even referring to me as Sam Lobster Sarr. From his first allegations that I wanted to reconcile with Jane because I had nothing going good for me in the United States, finally changed his tune, vowing that Jane met me purposely to lure me into the country to harm me. Now that I went to the Gambia and back without any serious incident, Mr. Mbake again started telling his listeners that I expected Jane to offer me a better job than the one I had in America, but I received nothing from him other than insults. Then barely 2 months after I returned from the Gambia on Tuesday, 28 April 2015, I received a call from an unfamiliar Gambian number at my workplace. The caller identified himself as Honorable Labba Jambar, the Gambia's Minister of Works and Communication. After exchanging pleasantries with Honorable Labba, I asked him about the purpose of the surprise call. I knew Mr. Jambar very well when I was serving as the commander of the Gambia Army. He was the Minister of Finance who succeeded Ousseynou Kama Cisse, the minister who died or was generally believed to have been killed in a choreographed car accident in June 1995. Honorable Jambar was one of the few lucky ones who survived President Jane's rampant firing of eminent officials due to his loyalty and incorruptible principles. He was now the Minister of Works and Communication and was widely recognized for constructing good roads and bridges across the country, always delivering projects on time. He was exactly the type of politician and loyalist Jane wanted around him all the time. Like most top officials in the civil service, Mr. Jambar always addressed Jane as boss. I am directed by boss to tell you to come and meet him right away, he said over the banjo line. He wanted me to fly back to the Gambia to meet President Jane. It was the last message I expected from President Jane after what he had said about me and my book during my visit to the Gambia 2 months ago. I can't come right away because I have already used my annual leave, I informed him. Mr. Sarr, I cannot tell that to boss, he replied. He needs you urgently and wants you to come and hear what he has to say. I later pondered the situation, realizing that Mr. Jambar's failure to persuade me might even lead to trouble for him with Jane. He probably volunteered to contact me on Jane's behalf, perhaps assuring him that he could persuade me to agree. Refusing to go might also bring trouble for my sister's business, which the government was financially supporting. She ran a travel agency used by both private and public travelers, including the government, with Jane's approval. Nevertheless, I didn't want to leave without the approval of my company bosses. I will have to talk to my company manager to see whether I can take some days off without pay, I told Mr. Jambar. Please do that and call me as soon as possible. I cannot tell boss that you wouldn't come, he emphatically said. But can't you give me a hint of what it is all about? I asked. He paused for a moment before telling me that President Jane wanted to appoint me as ambassador of the Gambia to the United Nations organization in New York. I was both shocked and excited by the suggestion. Mr. Jambar insisted that I should come and accept the job, which he was sure I could handle better than those currently at the mission. I didn't tell my manager the exact reason why I wanted to take some days off without pay, but only told him that it was about a family emergency I had to attend to in the Gambia. Mr. Alfred Seatola, my boss, was understanding and gave me another 2 weeks of unpaid leave. President Jane was on a nationwide tour when I arrived in the Gambia on the 6th of May 2015. I was, however, allocated a vehicle from Mr. Jambar's ministry to go and meet him at Janjambure village. I stayed with the entourage for 3 days, moving from one village to another where he was organizing political rallies, visiting unfinished and finished projects, including rice fields and other agricultural and horticultural businesses. Then on Friday, the 10th of May 2015, the president finally called me and the foreign minister, Mrs. McDougall Fay, to tell me that he was appointed me as Deputy Ambassador of the Gambia to the United Nations. I really need you there, he went on, because it seems like my diplomats there are not working for me, but for themselves to only improve their curriculum vitae, which is CV, or in America they call it resume. He didn't even bother to ask whether I accepted the job or not. But he turned around to give instructions to those who should facilitate my documentation, appointment letter, and other related terms and conditions of my contract or employment. Obviously, something shifted between the time when Honorable Jambar initially informed me from America of Jane's plan to appoint me as the Gambia's permanent representative to the United Nations, and the moment we met at Janjamburi town or village to discuss the appointment. Surprisingly, he designated me as the deputy permanent representative without providing any explanation, aside from emphasizing his lack of confidence in the current holder of the position. Despite spending my entire stay in Janjambure closely accompanying Honorable Jambar, who initially discussed the permanent representative role with me, he never mentioned the change to the deputy position. It's possible that he was unaware of the altered plan, and I didn't inquire about it either. I had expected to be sent to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for at least an orientation meeting on what the job entailed and what is expected of me. Instead, I went there only to collect my appointment letter signed by Mr. Dembo Fadera, the Permanent Secretary of the Gambia Personal Management Office, PMO. The department was exclusively responsible for appointing and dismissing civil servants. It was a contract for 2 years and renewable based on my satisfactory performance. I was told to go back to America and take over from General Yankuba Dabo, who was the deputy ambassador at the time. I returned to the US on the 15th of May 2015, resigned from my work at Frontline Industries and reported to work at the office of the Permanent Representative of the Gambia in East Manhattan, New York City. A formal handing and taking over protocol were conducted between General Yankuba Dabo and me, which indeed marked the beginning of my formal work as the Deputy Permanent Representative to the Permanent Representative Dr. Mamadi Tunkara. I also relocated from Newark City to the town of West Orange after 14 years of living there. My new house in West Orange was only about a 10-minute drive away from my former apartment in Newark City. My youngest son, Samsudeen Sarr Jr., was somehow not happy that he had to leave the city he grew up in and his friends at the Special Technology High School of Newark City. On the job as Deputy Permanent Representative, I started by familiarizing myself with the United Nations organization and my responsibilities. The Ambassador Dr. Mamadi Tunkara, a French-educated man, left everything in the hands of General Dabo for my initial orientation on my duties, available resources, entitlements, and limitations. I first learned that the United Nations was composed of 6 main organs: the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, called ECOSOC, the Trustees Council, and the International Court of Justice, and the United Nations Secretariat. Among these, among these, the General Assembly held the most importance, serving as the main deliberative, policymaking, and representative organ. It was comprised of representatives from all 193 member states of the United Nations, and crucial decisions were made through voting on resolutions passed from various organs. Secondly, I came to realize that the 54 African Union member states at the United Nations form a group called the African Group. They coordinated their participation on various issues, particularly those related to global health, environmental matters, migration, and international politics, peace, and security. I believe such information should have been provided by my home country before I started the job as a newly appointed United Nations diplomat. It is indeed important to learn beforehand that member states in the United Nations General Assembly are divided into geographical groupings, and elections are conducted to form various bodies and agencies. Furthermore, it is also crucial to know that Africa was allocated 3 non-permanent member seats on the Security Council, 14 members on the ECOSOC, 13 members on the Human Rights Council, and that the President of the General Assembly has to be an African in years ending in 4 and 9. For instance, in 2014 and 2019, the presidents were Sam Kahamba Kuteshe from Uganda and Professor Tijani Muhammad Bande from Nigeria, respectively. My job at the mission was more focused on assisting the ambassador in his work and attending meetings on his behalf when he was not available. I was also the sole authority to approve visa applications for foreigners applying to visit the Gambia. Most importantly, I played a significant role in facilitating peacekeeping missions for Gambian security forces deployed to various parts of the world, particularly about the company of GNA soldiers sent to Darfur in the Sudan. Notwithstanding, I sense that Ambassador Dr. Tunkara was never entirely comfortable with my presence, mainly due to the possibility of me succeeding him in the future. He was generally a very amiable person, but there was an underlying suspicion towards me. I wouldn't blame the guy for harboring suspicion about me, especially given that I was selected by Janet to take over his position, whatever circumstances led to the change in plans. Despite the less than ideal working relations between my boss, Mr. Tunkara, and me, I decided to go along with it and dedicated myself to the job. He was aware of my background as a populist writer and not just a soldier, and this led him to test my writing skills sooner than I expected. About 3 months after my appointment in early August 2015, we received a correspondence from Banjul that President Jane will attend the 70th anniversary of the United Nations General Assembly in September. At the end of August, Ambassador Tunkara called me to his office and informed me that as the Deputy Permanent Representative, I was responsible for writing the speech that President Jane will deliver at the United Nations Assembly. He instructed me to liaise with his secretary, Miss Della, a locally hired woman from the Caribbean nation of St. Lucia, who was to assist me with materials and pointers for drafting the speech. Miss Della had been working at the Gambian mission in New York for over a decade and was quite familiar with how the United Nations functions, especially in terms of documentation for newly appointed diplomats and arranging United Nations credentials for government visitors from the Gambia, as well as visa processing for visitors. At first, she was a difficult person to deal with, but she had a close relationship with Ambassador Tunkara. When I asked her what I needed to draft the speech, she directed me to the United Nations website where previously delivered speeches by heads of state could be found. She then informed me that she was taking her annual 2 weeks vacation, which had already been approved by the ambassador. Additionally, Ambassador Tunkara was also scheduled to travel out of the United States of America and would return the day I was to submit the draft speech for his review. By the time they both returned, I had diligently done my research and prepared the first draft of the United Nations speech for President Jane. After reading the draft speech, Ambassador Dr. Tunkara called me to his office to discuss what he felt needed improvement on the script. He didn't provide an overall assessment of the speech's quality. Colonel, he addressed me. I have carefully reviewed the draft speech, and I believe it lacks 3 crucial points. First, there is a need to include a United Nations Security Council reform that should grant African member states not just 2 permanent seats, but an additional 5 non-permanent seats on the council. Second, we must add the implementation of the resolution for a 2-state solution to the Palestinian and Israeli conflict. Lastly, we must call for an end to America's decades-long economic embargo on the island of Cuba. The ambassador emphasized that these 3 issues were customary in speeches delivered by African heads of state at every annual United Nations General Assembly, which I had not been aware of before. He handed me the document and requested that I incorporated those 3 subjects in the speech. Before I left, he cautioned me, "Colonel, keep it in mind that the draft speech will be sent to Banjul for the president's approval, and they might decide to make changes or even write the whole paper again." I included the 3 suggested subjects, and the speech was then sent to Banjul for approval. 48 hours later, the approved speech returned with no changes, except for the disappointing news that President Jane will not attend the summit. Instead, Vice President Satujob Saidi will represent him. Well, folks, thank you very much for listening. This ends chapter 27. Till Friday, you guys have a nice day.